Let's get this started. I want to start quick today. Here we go. Yes! Holy cow, you made it to the Podcast Engineering Show. I don't know if you butt dialed it or what happened, but you somehow found your way here to the Podcast Engineering Show. My name is Chris Curran. I produce podcasts for medium companies and big companies and authors. And every week on this show, we bring you podcast production techniques on a silver platter. We really talk shop with podcast producers, engineers, and other specialists. And I have a background in the music industry, worked on a bunch of records and had a lot of fun doing that. But ever since I entered podcasting about 7 or 8 years ago, I noticed a huge lack of audio skills in podcasting in general. And so that's where this show can help, because we talk about the professional aspects of production, so you can take what you learn here and be able to produce your show better. You'll be able to make it sound better, and you'll be able to produce it in less time, because time is money. And here's the other thing. I really believe that you can produce really great sounding audio. I really do. I believe in you. That's what I'm trying to say. Scott, what do you think? Do you think I came off genuine there?
No, it sounds great. I like your message.
I really do. I believe people can really learn audio and do it well. So, all right, of course, Barry's with me.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That's right. He's in the studio. Barry? Yeah. Hey, Barry. Barry, get on the mic. He walked away. Get on the mic again. Come back here, Barry. Scott Somerville's here today. Did you know that?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I know you did, dude. Scott Somerville.
It's so nice to meet you. Yeah, Barry, man.
Oh, forget it.
I'm telling you. Oh. So, all right, Scott Somerville is an audio engineer and podcast producer, and we met in a really cool way. We met in an elevator in Las Vegas.
Yeah, as most people do.
Yeah, you know. And you saw my shirt. You're like, Podcast Engineering School, what is that? I was like, dude, I
feel like it was late at night or something, and I just remember looking over at your thing and being like, oh, cool. That sounds cool. What's up? And then, and there you go. Here we are.
And I was like, hey, man. And you're like, yeah, I produce podcasts. I'm like, dude, come on the show. So you're here. So you're.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
So you're an audio engineer, and now you're producing a bunch of podcasts. What describe what you're currently doing exactly?
I edit, produce, record a bunch of different podcasts, and yeah, I also still do post-production and other general audio engineering. I started off in music like you, so okay. I've got an extensive background.
And where are you, by the way?
Oh, I'm North Hollywood, Los Angeles.
Oh, okay. So have you been in some of the big, cool LA studios?
Yeah, absolutely. I came up in some of those.
Oh, cool. Which ones?
I started off at Larrabee Sound here in North Hollywood, cool. And got to work with some of the world's biggest, best mix engineers and other engineers and stuff like that, and good place to do kind of a training at the beginning of my career, sort of.
Yeah, that's awesome,
that was
man.
Awesome. And then I get to visit a bunch of other cool studios around here. You know, I've been to the Record Plant in Westlake and Cello, and a bunch of really cool studios around here.
That's awesome. It reminds me, actually, when I was in New York in the early 90s working in the studios. Well, actually, my roommate got married in Arizona, so we all kind of flew out to Arizona for the wedding, and then we just decided, like, hey, let's just drive to LA, and we'll just drop by some of the studios, and we'll see if they're hiring. And because in New York, we were mainly working in these studios, which worked on mostly rap music. So there was not a lot of live music recording going on. Mm-hmm. And we were rock and roll guys, right? So, or metal guys. So we're like, dude, if we can go work at, the Record Plant, or I heard of Larrabee before, but also there's another one of the biggest studios. I forget the name. Not the Power Station. That was in New York. Anyway, we're like, so we just decided we're like, let's go by there and see if they're hiring. Kind of like dumb young people just thinking you can walk in somewhere. But anyway, we kind of visited, and they weren't expecting us, so nothing happened, of course. And so we just went.
That's a good thing to try. You never know how that's going to work out. You walk in and say, "Hey, I want to be here," and some people say, "We like that. You're in." So
yeah, That's
Never hurts
true.
to try.
Yeah, it's always worth a try. So these days you're working on podcasts. So do you work on podcasts mainly from home?
I do a ton of work from home now. Maybe as some people can relate to, you just don't need to have an insane studio now. You can just have a pretty robust setup on a desk and be good to go. So I mix TV shows from home. I mix, do a bunch of engineering for other stuff, like everything. Probably 75% of my work is from home now.
That is really cool. So let's do the speed round then. So do you host any podcasts, or are you on any podcasts?
I kind of chip in on a podcast called Ask Eliza Anything I do with Eliza Schlesinger, the comedian, and I'm sort of the guy in the booth. Then I'll chime in every now and again, but I'm not like a co-host or anything, but I have the freedom to jump in and say something if I want. So that's kind of about it. Everything other than that, I'm on the other side of the glass. So.
Okay. So then let's do the speed round. And so for you, since you're not, well, no, because you do have, if you are sort of chiming in on Ask Eliza Anything, and now do you go to a studio for that, or do you do that from home?
We record that one at Wondery Studios.
Oh, Wondery.
Wondery, yeah, the podcast network for, Dirty John and ton of other Business Wars. They have a ton of shows on that. But yeah, we do that at their Sunset Studios in Sunset, West Hollywood.
Oh, okay. So wait, tell me about the Wondery studio then.
It's cool. It's actually a similar setup to anything else I use, really, which is it's basically the equivalent of, have you ever, a Whisper Room? Have you ever heard of those?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just basically an enclosure. And so they have a room inside of a room, essentially, and then basically a pretty good Mac Mini, couple monitors, universal Apollo interface, and we run that through Cloudlifters to RE20s, and there you go.
Oh, that's cool. And so,
or the other way, I should say, we run RE20s through Cloudlifters into the Apollo.
Right. I was typing in notes as you said it, and I knew what you meant. So, and then you record it in a computer, obviously.
Yes, Pro Tools. I use mostly, if not always, Pro Tools for recording. I do Logic for some composing and things like that, but usually when I'm dealing with straight audio and recording or editing, I prefer Pro Tools, and luckily that's what a lot of people I deal with use. So,
oh, that's cool. All right, so then when you go there with that show, then so Eliza's there, and does she have guests come in and stuff too?
Yeah, we'll have guests, and if we don't have a guest, then her assistant Emily is the default guest, basically. And yeah, if we have a guest in that week, then I'll chime in way less. I'll let them have their conversation. They don't need to be hearing from me every minute. So
I see.
I usually kind of hang back on those, but when it's the three, me, Emily, and Eliza, then I tend to chip in a little bit more, just because it's less intrusive when there's no guest there to step on.
That's cool. All right, so then you just capture it all there, and you're doing the post production for that show, correct?
Yeah, I'll take that, and then I'll take it home, and then I'll add in the theme song, and we have a little segment called Top of the Cob. I'll put that in there, and I usually play that live during the show, but I'll tighten it up and everything like that. And there's usually very little editing. Most people don't have their publicist writing us, asking us to take things out, but it happens. And so I'll just tighten it up, put a little mix on it, add in anything else, and send it out.
Okay, so it's through Wondery. So what hosting do they use? Or do they have their own?
Art19. Most all their stuff goes Art19.
Right, Art19 for hosting. That's cool. Yeah, I don't know much about that world. I see when these podcasting email newsletters that you get, and all the the corporate level podcasting news and stuff, they always mention Wondery, and I hear Art19, but I don't know much about that world. I'm sort of more in the independent, smaller podcast world.
Yeah, which is cool. Honestly, I've only ever, it sounds weird, and maybe it is weird, but I wish I had more knowledge on how that side of it goes, because I came into it from, I think the first podcast I just bumped the mic there. I think the first podcast I ever started working on was probably through Wondery, and through there I've kind of only done that I'm so used to that type of process that I'm not sure how else I would go about it. I'm sure I could figure it out. I've just never had to think about it.
Got it. All right, so we're gonna dig a little deeper into that technical setup and that production workflow. But where are you now? You're home now, and if so, what mic do you have?
I am at home right now, and I just, if it sounds weird, that's why. And I just have a SM57 up going into, I have a little Universal Apollo sitting here on my desk that I use. And yeah, I'm going in through that using their little console and straight into Pro Tools.
Okay. So wait, so Universal Audio Apollo, it's a little console or it's just an interface?
Just an interface. It's a little box monitoring section, 2 mic pre's on this one that I have at home because it's small enough to fit on my desk. I don't need a big rack or anything. Yeah, it kind of does everything you need, has talkback, and not that I need that in my apartment, but Right.
Now, is that that's not the Arrow, is it?
No, but I've been looking at those. I wonder about that for mobile setups. It's a little bit more robust than the Arrow.
Got it. And your Apollo, how many inputs on your Apollo?
The one I have at home is just 2. Because again, I'm not tracking drums here or anything. So
not yet. Oh,
yeah, not yet. Look out, neighbors.
There you go. Hey, maybe your neighbor's a drummer. That'd be good.
Definitely the people downstairs from me write music or produce or something, because you can't ignore those kick drums on loop.
Yeah,
like you could probably tell too when somebody's clearly working on a bass line or something, and you're like, yeah, I know exactly what's going on down there.
Right? That's so funny. It'd be like, just yell down the stairs, cut a little 200, please. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Roll that off, please. Or like, hey, just go up to a B and then back to A, and that's your bridge. Call it, please.
That'd be great. You could text message your neighbor while he's playing the
walk
bass.
Down there and hand him like, look, here's a better arrangement for the bridge. Let me get some sleep. Thank you.
Walk in with a clipboard.
You don't need to go to a 4th chorus. It's very redundant.
Oh, 4th chorus. All right, so you do the one show in the Wondery studio, and you do you do more than one show there?
I help them out with some other stuff. I've had other shows with them in the past, but currently the only thing I do there is Ask Eliza Anything, and then it's kind of odd, but a lot of the other shows I work on, I don't often record. I just end up on the post side of it. So
so they just send you the tracks and you just do your thing.
Yeah, I'll get handed all kinds of random stuff. It depends. Working on so many different things with so many different people, I sort of never know what I'm going to get. Sometimes it's, hey, this was recorded in the back of a cab on my iPhone, and sometimes it's, we were in a professional studio in Seattle, and yeah, it's so different on every single thing, which will probably come up later when we're talking about the process of things. But
right, yeah. All right, so I think I got it set. You're doing the one show in the Wondery studio, and you got your little setup at home, and then you're doing a bunch of post-production for a bunch of other shows, and they just send you the audio and you do your thing.
Yeah, and if I have to go record something else, I have a mobile setup too, which is a MacBook Pro. I have a little Presonus 6.8 interface, and I'll either take some 58s, 57s, or Shure SM7s or RE20s or something, depending on kind of what's going on and what we're doing that day, where we're going to be. Sometimes it's like, hey, we're in a hotel lobby, so
okay,
get something that rejects the extra noise, things like that.
Okay, so first let's talk about when you're in the Wondery studio for Ask Eliza Anything. You said you're recording into a Mac Mini, and so that's is that everything's right in the room with you, right?
Yeah, well, there's the booth, yeah, and then I'm sitting at a desk with a Mac Mini, Cloudlifter, the UA Apollo, and some monitors and things like that.
Oh, so you're not in the booth with them?
No, there's glass, like I'm separated from that, so I'm on the other side of that.
The thing I miss about being in real studios is the talkback button.
Mm-hmm.
Just being able to be like, nah, try it again, guys.
Yeah. It is nice. I mean, you'll have other people come in and be saying like, "Oh, hey, can we get that read for such and such company?" Or we got somebody coming in here in 20 minutes. Can you guys make sure you keep it tight? And obviously, if they were to come in the booth, we'd have to stop or something. So it's nice to have that separation where I can kind of do what I'm doing or look stuff up and you don't hear keys clacking in the background or whatever.
Yeah. Okay, so you got the UA Apollo interface there. Is that which Apollo is that one?
It's the 8.
Okay.
I believe, yeah, eight inputs. Yeah, and I've used the UA stuff a lot, and I've used a lot of other different interfaces, and I enjoy them. They've always had good mic pre's, and yeah, so it's a little more expensive than other interfaces you could get that could kind of handle the same job, but you do get a little bit more quality, a little more clarity with it and stuff like that. So I enjoy them.
Yeah, I would love to try them. In fact, about 2 years ago, I was really considering buying an Apollo 8P, and I just don't need it, right? So, but I like the idea that the processing for the plugins is on board the interface itself.
Yeah, that's why I bought the one for my home setup too. Not only is it a great monitoring section, it's got pre's if I need it, it's got a headphone amp if I need it, and runs my speakers and everything like that. But yeah, it's got onboard DSP, so it can handle some load, which is nice. And it comes with a nice bundle of their plugins too. They've always had really good modeling plugins. They're maybe a bit expensive, but they're well made and they're well modeled. So, now that I'm not in those big studios with racks and racks of all the vintage gear and an awesome tech to take care of all that stuff, having a good plug-in version of stuff I really appreciate.
Totally. All right, and then you got all RE20s in there, and each one's plugged into a Cloudlifter. Yeah.
Which seems to be the way of the future. Everybody's doing that now, which is great because you don't have to jack up your pre's so high.
Although the preamps on the Apollo could easily handle it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm on a SM57 right now, going straight into the Apollo. I don't have a Cloudlifter at home because I don't need it most of the time. But yeah, so I've got the pre jacked up pretty high on this one right now, and hopefully it sounds good to everybody. I don't know. It'd be very embarrassing if this sounds super terrible on my end.
Yeah, no, it sounds fine. Sounds good. And plus, I'm gonna mix it. I don't just take the raw audio and mix it with the other voice and publish it. It's like I do whatever processing I think it needs to sound its best. So
yeah, totally.
I love mixing. I love plugins. That's what I like most about audio production is the mixing part.
It is fun. I always tell people it's a good mixture of creative and technical. And I don't know. I mean, there's a million things that have that mixture, but it's such a nice balance of being creative and being technical, and it's cool. Get to use a lot of your brain for that.
Yeah, and then you're using Pro Tools. So you got Pro Tools at the studio and you got Pro Tools at home.
Yeah, big fan of Pro Tools. I don't know. I came up on Pro Tools was it, so I don't know.
So, because I don't know. Yeah, I actually have never. Oh no, I can't say that. I did own one of the intro versions of Pro Tools maybe 10 years ago I don't know if it came with an interface. I forget. But so Pro Tools is obviously a really good DAW, and it's not really used in podcasting very much because it's a little overkill. But as far as Pro Tools goes, do you have to own certain hardware to use Pro Tools or no?
Well, you used to. It used to be very much. If you wanted to have a home setup, the only thing you could really do for a very minimal setup was to have an M box. So you used to have DigiDesign made M boxes, and it was a tiny little interface, maybe 1 or 2 pre's on it. I think you get up to 4, but you would have to have that for Pro Tools to work with your system essentially. And then they went to native a few years back, and now you can have your laptop just running Pro Tools 12 without any interface. You don't need to have an iLock sticking out now because you can use the cloud-based stuff like licensing and stuff like that. So it's really changed a lot in the last I don't even want to know, 5-7 years, something like that. But yeah, you used to have a much more robust, like rack mounted setup to have a full blown rig at your disposal.
Right. That you reminded me. I did have a M Audio, a little interface. So that, and I think the Pro Tools came with it.
Right. Yeah. There's Digi-002s back in the day, and Digi-001, and then 192s, and now there's HDIOs. If you still want to run Pro Tools HD, you'll need to get a PCI card to put in your computer and have interfaces and all that kind of stuff. But for Pro Tools non-HD, you can have. It's really easy to get up and running these days. But when it comes to podcasting and stuff, the licenses, I think it's $300 for a year, or something like, I don't even, $1,200 or $1,500 or something for a perpetual license. And when you're factoring in podcast budgets and stuff like that, if you're just trying to get up and running at home or start your own, that's a big investment to make. And then you have to learn the program. Like you said, it's very overkill if you just need to record 2 or 3 tracks of voice,
Yeah. Okay, so then you do a bunch of post-production. So let's move into the post-production then. So, well, right now you're on a SM57, which is awesome. So you have like a windscreen up on it or something?
I do. I feel like it's not catching a lot of the P's pop in here, but I do have a little kind of slide over mount thing on the 57 just to catch some of it, but it's good. It's unintrusive and it's sitting right in front of my face, and it's better than setting up a RE20 on a jib arm or something. I've just got a little kind of like I'm miking myself like a snare drum right now.
Nice. So yeah, and if there's any plosives, I can remove it later with iZotope RX7. So no problem there.
Nice.
And okay. So post production. Let's talk about that. So you're doing everything in Pro Tools. So I use a lot of Waves plugins and some FabFilter plugins and a few others. iZotope. Now,
I'm right there with you on all that.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah, totally.
But now in Pro Tools, it's a different plugin extension or something? Or it's .au or something?
.aax for the
AAX,
64-bit plugins, yeah. Pro Tools, I believe 11 on is 64-bit, and they went to, or maybe 10 on. I'm a mess. I don't know. But once they moved to 64-bit based processing, it's .aax for the plugin files.
Right, and so not all plugin, or do most plugin manufacturers make their plugins in the AAX format?
Yeah, most of them. I mean, definitely all the Waves, FabFilter certainly, iZotope, all their bundles, I believe, all come in 64-bit .aax format, and yeah, pretty much all the main ones. Universal Audio, whoever, there's a lot of great plugin manufacturers out there too.
Got it. And one thing, we're going to talk about processing and stuff, and what exactly what individual plugins you use. But as far as I've always heard things like the mix engine in Pro Tools is superior to other DAWs, meaning, and just for people who don't know what that means, it's like when you have a bunch of tracks in your DAW and you click render or mix down, or I think in Pro Tools they call it bounce, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when it's like you're gonna mix down all your multi-tracks into either a mono or stereo mix. And so I've heard that the engine within Pro Tools that does all that mixing down is significantly higher quality than other DAWs. Is that true?
I mean, I would, it's like I want to say I would think so, but I haven't done a ton of shootouts with it.
Right.
But based on how much kind of R&D they've put into it over the years, and how much, I don't know, how robust of a program it is. And I've noticed the advancements from Pro Tools 5 up to 12, like seeing how much everything else has come along processing-wise with them. It wouldn't surprise me that theirs is just a cut above. But I can't really confirm that without doing a shootout between, multiple programs.
Got it. And when you do mix down in Pro Tools, does it have to do it real time, like play the audio in real time as it's mixing it?
No, thank God. They a few versions back they started in with the offline bounce, And you were able to do that in Logic, I think, a little bit before that. And yeah, no, you can offline bounce now, which, man, it's so crazy. The second you start doing offline bounces as opposed to real-time bounces, you're like, how did I ever sit around that long to bounce something? Like when I'm doing the post-production and stuff, I'm doing multiple stems, maybe a set of 14 stems or something for which is printing the individual pieces, maybe like a music stem where it's just the music, so you have that on its own in case you need to make minor tweaks later. Like you would have to sit there for a 25-minute show, a 30-minute show times 14 just to generate your files, and now that it's offline, you can bang them all out in the course of an hour or something. So,
wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I thought I remembered back in the day in the 90s when with Pro Tools, you had to, when you mixed it down, you had to run it in real time and just play it through.
Definitely. Yeah, and back then you would.
That's one thing I enjoyed in the studio in a mix session. Like you spend, 10, 12, 16 hours mixing a song, and it's like, 4:30 in the morning, and you're like, putting half inch on the half inch machine and recording the final mix. And like, as it's and of course in those days with the analog tape, you had to play it, the whole thing, play it down. And I don't know, that was just kind of exciting. Like, cause I would always, I was the assistant engineer mostly back then. And I would always watch the engineers cause the music would already have all the automation done. So they weren't actually doing anything when we were printing the mix. They would just be listening. But it's sort of an excitement about printing the final mix. And also, I always used to have to watch the engineer because sometimes they'll be like, wait, stop, hold on. And they'll stop printing it and they'll want to change something. And then they'll work for another half hour. And then they'll be like, all right, let's print it. And then you do it again. So, I don't know. I guess stuff like that doesn't happen anymore, does it, Scott?
I don't know. I mean, well, not in the exciting, real, tangible, physical way that you're discussing. That still happens. Some people still go to tape in studios and stuff like that, which is always, now it's kind of like a cool thing in itself. Like, oh, we're going to print this, this whole thing's on 2-inch. We're going to print it to 1-inch or whatever.
Right.
That's still a nice thing to have happen. And I don't know. When I came into engineering, it was 2005, and there was still enough tape around that it's like I was in that weird section between digital was starting to get good enough to be reliable and usable across the board. And maybe it had a couple years earlier than that, but there were still enough people that were tape, enthusiasts or whatever. So we had to learn how to run tape machines, how to calibrate tape machines and all that kind of stuff. And it seemed like much more of a part of stuff back then, and I got to kind of watch it just fade right out as digital stuff came up. Digital workstations and everything became so much more reliable, and the processing so much better, and all that kind of stuff. But people still do it a bit. But even back then, I remember being a second engineer at Larrabee and sitting there in the 4 o'clock in the morning. We get the mix done, and then sit there and run down all the stems for the project and all the main prints. We do a snare up a dB and a background vocals up a dB print and whatever, all that kind of stuff to try and cover our bases. But that was always the kind of nice part where you'd sit down and like kick on the TV, have a movie going, but you'd still have to pay attention. Otherwise you'd end up double printing a vocal or something stupid. But yeah, I always like that part of it too, because it just feels like maybe it's the home stretch and you're finally going to get to go to sleep or something.
Yeah. Yeah. And then sometimes you'd have to make like back when I was doing it was like you have to make some cassette tapes because some of the people from the labels, you had to like FedEx some tapes or a DAT tape or a cassette tape out to them so they could hear it immediately.
Yeah, totally. We would do that with CDs. Have to get a CD. Oh, run this over to someone, Christina Aguilera's house so she can hear it tonight or whatever. And you go, okay,
right.
Send somebody out there at 3 a.m.
I remember one engineer I worked with, he had a DAT player in his truck.
That's crazy. So that's dedication right there.
That's dedication, man. We would print the mix and of course the DAT running as a backup, but then he wanted me to make a copy of the DAT for him to take home. So as he's driving home, he can listen to the DAT in his truck. It's pretty cool.
That's amazing. Did he make you print it at 48K?
I don't know.
Just say, I want that high quality, that high fidelity while I'm driving down the freeway.
Yeah. Yeah, it was Jason Corsaro, who actually recorded the album Super Unknown by Soundgarden.
Oh, wow.
I believe.
Yeah, that's a hell of a credit.
And I think he did a bunch more. I don't even know if he's still. I think he might have passed away, but I'm not sure. I guess I shouldn't say that if I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Either way, regardless, that's a great sounding record. So right on to that guy.
Yeah. Well, and Brendan O'Brien mixed it. So
dang. Yeah. And having a DAT player in your truck, that's pretty cool too.
Yeah. Oh, and guess what? I recently pulled out all my old DATs from my closet, and I was looking through, and like, some of my old band stuff is on there, and some, well, I can't say who, but there's a few artists where I have some outtakes from the studio, which I'm probably not supposed to have, but
right.
I mean, you know how you just kind of end up with some things over the years, and it, it's no harm. I'm not. It's not like I'm putting it on Facebook or anything. And I went to ask see if I could rent a DAT player because I wanted to play the DAT and get it into my computer basically. And you can't find a DAT player anywhere.
Yeah, I totally feel you. I think it was the first record. I was in like a punk band when I was in junior high school, stuff like that, which is what got me interested in engineering in the first place. But we recorded, it was like Pro Tools was pretty much brand new, I think. And because this must have been mid-late 90s, 97, somewhere in there. And the guy whose studio we were at was all excited because he had Pro Tools running to ADATs. And, he, that was like total future technology at the time. So fast forward to a couple of years ago, I was like, man, I would love to get those ADATs now that I've been an engineer for over a decade and go back and like remix those or even just listen to them and see what the fidelity is like. I don't even know. So I tried to look up an ADAT player to see if I could dump those myself. And yeah, people are like, call up a rental house. You're like, hey, do you guys have any ADATs? They're like, do you just mean DAT, sir? I don't know what you mean with this A. I'm like, oh boy. Okay, never mind.
Telling you. And I just looking for a DAT player. No one makes them anymore. Or maybe I think one company does make them. But all these used ones are out there, and I'm like, I'm not buying a used one because you never know if the heads are still good, right?
Right. Yeah. Who knows? I would think in the corner, in the back closets of many a studio and old production house, you'd probably find them. Definitely not a new one, but you could probably find some old crusty ones. People just don't even know they're still there.
Oh, that's a good reminder because if I was near New York, like I grew up in Jersey, so if I was still in Jersey, I would definitely go back to, Soundtrack is still there. Hit Factory's gone, I guess, but I knew all the techs there, and I think the head tech is still there. So I would just actually go there and be like, dude, you got any DAT players laying around? I can make some copies.
Yeah, he'd probably be like, oh, do you want to take like 7 of them? Because we got to get these out of here.
That's true. I could probably just buy one for like $20.
Yeah.
Buy a player. All right, so we're talking about Pro Tools. That's where all that started. And so, all right, so now talk to me about what plugins you actually use. So I'm assuming you use a bunch of the UA plugins. Give us an idea of what plugins you're using.
Actually, what's funny is I don't use a ton of theirs because they tend to eat up the DSP on within the Universal really quick. Like they're very intensive on their own DSP, which you would think like it should be able to handle a bunch of them, but it gets eaten up real quick. And then it'll also slow down my offline bounce time because then it has to communicate with the interface. It's via Thunderbolt, so it's super fast, but I'll notice that the bounce times get a little slower if I'm including some other UA type plugins that are
interesting,
have the offset stuff like that. But what I really love is I use a ton of like the things that you mentioned. I use a ton of Wave stuff because for everybody listening, they always have great deals on really good plugins, and they're a great company. They're one of the oldest ones making plugins, so their stuff is really, really great, really reliable. But more importantly, you can get a great deal on them if you keep your eye out. So when I see a $400 SSL EQ or channel strip or something like that for $30, I'm like, pile them on. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then they're great too. Cause like at Larrabee, for example, we had 3 rooms at the time. I think they've expanded to like 5 or 6 now, but in each of the rooms was an SSL 9000. So that's like the console that I'm super used to working with. I know all the ins and outs of it and everything. So when I can get just like a little digital version of an SSL channel, I know exactly what to do with it and what I like and all that kind of stuff. So I love the SSL channel strips, both the G and the E series from Waves. Waves F6 EQ plugin. Did you ever use that one?
No, that's one I've actually never used.
Yeah, it's cool. It sort of works like a multi-band compressor, but as an EQ, which might be like splitting hairs. I don't know. But
Right? It's like a dynamic EQ, I think, right?
yeah, exactly. Dynamic EQ. And it's, reactive. You set the bands. It's got 6 bands and filters, high pass, low pass. And you could set thresholds, attack, release, gain, frequency, and the Q. And I find it's just super helpful, especially getting different dialogue from different sources all the time and all that kind of stuff. You can sort of, it's adaptable in itself. So it helps me to adapt to what I'm dealing with. I've only been using it for a couple months, but I'm digging it. It's a great sounding EQ.
Okay, so as far as like, do you have like preferred settings in the F6 plugin that you like start with or something?
Maybe for a vocal, they have a vocal cleaner preset in there, and like maybe I'll load that up and then immediately start changing it. But yeah, it's maybe a good place to start is vocal cleaner. If somebody was to purchase one and want to load up something to get a head start there, that's a good one.
And how's the user interface is good? Have you ever used the FabFilter Pro Q3 or Pro Q2?
Yeah, definitely. I love those. It's got a great interface on it, and I'm a sucker for good UI because if I see a plugin that just has just doesn't look great, then I'm like, well, how's it going to sound great? Which is probably stupid, but
right.
I'm a sucker for good UI, so I don't know. I see something that looks good, I'm like, oh, this is usable.
Right.
But yeah, FabFilter stuff looks great too. They look fun.
Yeah, FabFilter is like, I just consider them on a different level, like the UI and the sound, and it's just, I mean,
those are tremendous.
They're expensive too, but
yeah. But,
so you're using the Waves, bunch of Wave stuff. What else?
I love the iZotope stuff as well. Their stuff, especially, like I said, dealing with audio from different places, and some stuff's really crusty and things like that. A lot of the post-production stuff I do for literal for Motor Trend, you'll get like loud engine sounds that'll blow things out a lot. Not necessarily just straight clipping, but like real hard, like a big rev that'll end up causing a bunch of clicks. And I find that like the iZotope click remover and stuff is just priceless for me. That and the denoise is great as well. Pretty much that whole RX bundle is pretty radical.
Right. And do you use RX like as a standalone, or do you use the modules as plugins inside Pro Tools?
Sometimes I don't usually run them real time as a plugin, like as an insert necessarily, but you can use it as like an audio suite, kind of pull it up, select a piece of audio, and then render it. You can sort of audition it within the thing, and then you get rid of it, close it after that, and so it's not counting towards your processing or anything.
All right. So you pull it up. Let's say it's a D click with iZotope, and you'll kind of listen to it, like preview mode, listen to it and adjust the settings. And when the settings are good, you just like click render or something, and then it renders it, and then you're done with it.
Yeah, it essentially just duplicates the audio file, renders it, puts on all the processing, renders it, and then keeps it in the same part of the timeline, just puts it right back in there, and now you've got a nice click-free piece of audio. And it's really transparent. That I think you'd probably agree, right? Like it's, as long as your settings aren't like insane, you can get rid of like actual clicks and pops pretty seamlessly without having any noticeable artifacts or anything. It's pretty great.
Totally. Yeah. RX-7 is awesome. Or I should say RX, because I know people who still have RX-5 or RX-6. I mean, they might not have some of the really brand new modules, but the rest is pretty much the same. So,
yeah, whatever you can get your hands on, good stuff.
Yeah. All right, now what other plugin companies, or because one thing I don't use a lot of, and we just had class number 6 of my podcast engineering school last night, actually, when I'm talking about mixing. And I teach the students a little bit about reverbs and delays and chorus and things like that, flanging. But like those types of effects like are really never used in podcast production. I mean, unless it's like an intro voice that you just want to make it sound weird, right? Like just add some weird effects so it sounds weird.
Right. I think it's cool. That's like some more, maybe like an advanced class for some like more finesse kind of, you can add as an effect, but like you can do some really cool stuff with that. I know you and a previous guest had discussed putting a little reverb on something just to make it sound more lively. And like, that's a cool move, especially if you have a very dead vocal. If you're in a real proper studio where you're getting really nice, totally dead dialogue, then, sometimes it helps add some life. I think you even said something about it gives the sort of the voice some context to exist in, like psychoacoustically, which is so true. You can just bring a little extra richness out of it. Just give it, it's like, I think you said it really well in a previous episode. Give it psychoacoustically, give it some context. It helps.
Yeah, totally. And I was experimenting with that little bit of reverb and some other things for a while, but I just stopped doing that. I just try stuff like, and even recently I bought probably 3 or 4 new plugins and just try stuff because I don't know. I kind of like experimenting, and also, it gives me stuff to talk about. You know what I mean? So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all supposed to be fun, kind of, right? You get a bunch of anytime you get something with a bunch of knobs and buttons on it, you have to go push them and turn them. That's the fun.
Yeah, it is fun. And there's one plugin, it's called Gulfos, and I think it's like $180 or $200. And I looked at it for so long, I researched it, and mostly it's used on music. And it's like sort of like an EQ, but it does it. There's AI inside of it, or machine learning, whatever. And anyway, everyone was like, "Oh, it's great," and so I bought it. And now every time I try to use it, when I turn it on, I feel like, did you ever listen to, let's say it's a vocal, whether it's for podcasting or for music, and you listen to the vocal, and like if you add too much high frequency, like it's sort of like, and I'm talking like high, I don't know how high the frequencies are, but it'll sort of just, it's harsh, but it's also like, it seems like it's coming from another dimension, and it just feels weird. I don't know what that is. And then you turn down the high end and you're like, okay, that's better. I actually, with this Gulfos plugin, when I turn it on and I start to use it or crank it up a little, I feel that weirdness. And I'm like, what is that? I don't know what it is.
Is it a, I don't know, like a 32-bit plugin running on a 64-bit system, and it's like dither or something? I don't know if that would work.
Yeah,
anyway,
I don't think so, because it's, I don't know, but I don't think so. I think it's more like it could be a phasing thing.
Yeah, could be some delay happening and just very slight latency on the plugin or something like that, causing something weird.
Yeah, because it's like an automatic EQ, and it says it makes like 300 EQ adjustments per second.
Yeah, that's got to be really processor intensive. It's got to be a latency type situation, but I have no idea.
Yeah. So anyway, sometimes I hear things and I'm like, I don't know what it is. So it's, and again, I'm experimenting, so it's not like everyone is out there using Gulfos and I can just ask somebody. So,
right. Yeah, I've never heard of it, but I'll definitely look into it. And
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think with music, it's probably better because music has more information. But when I use it on just a person's voice who's speaking, like, it seems like there's less information, meaning, well, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I don't know. There's also so often like little background noises when you're recording a voice, depending on if you don't have like a crazy nice studio or something like that, which I think most people don't have the luxury of having like an amazing, place to record their dialogue. It's always like totally good enough, but you might have the neighbors out there moving his trash cans, or there's some ambient noise going around somewhere, just air movement in the space that you're in or something. And maybe it's affecting that, like trying to work on that little subtle stuff in the background, but who knows?
Right. Yeah. Who knows? All right. So what about automation? Or let's talk about incorporating music and how you incorporate the music in post-production and how you fade the music and how you level the voice above the music. Like, tell me how you do all that.
Yeah, I usually go pretty hard on, not pretty hard, but I usually am all about the automation because it's just reliable and you can see what you're doing. And yeah, I always try to make sure if I'm working in headphones, check it on speakers because music will be way louder in your headphones. You got to check it on speakers to find out that it's actually way quieter than you thought it was. But yeah, so I'll always try and just automate it in. A lot of times with shows that start off with a music and then come into a host like you're kind of used to, then I'll just make a nice little, just automate it down, the volume of the music to drop down nicely underneath it, keep a bed of it there, ride it in case there's any big changes in the music itself, like it pops into a big chorus or something, maybe kick it down another couple dB on that part. And yeah, I usually go as opposed to using like ducking or side chaining or something.
Right.
Which I would use if I was in more of a broadcast situation, sort of a set it and forget it ducker type of thing within my channel strip. But yeah, since I'm usually doing it in a post setting like that, then I'll just automate it, and it doesn't usually take too much time to get it real nice and totally reliable like that.
And as far as for like automating the volume of individuals, like the host or the guest, do you do any of that? Because I don't. I use EQ and compression, and I use whatever processing I need to on a voice to make it punchy and nice and up in front. But then I don't. Well, I do use my Vocal Rider plugin. Do you use Vocal Rider?
I'll use that sometimes. I find sometimes that I can really quickly get a setting with that totally works and sounds transparent and everything like that. And then other times I'll put that on and it's just like trying way too hard and you can completely hear it. So I'll throw that on there sometimes and be like, please work nicely. And then other times, yeah, I'll just if I can see visually that something jumps up, or I notice on my main meter that I use like a WLM plus for pretty much everything actually, which is from Waves on that last thing in my stereo bus chain, to monitor the actual levels of everything. And if you notice one section is, up at -13 and everything else is hovering around -20 or something, maybe I'll go in there and automate it down just to tamp it down. In a podcast setting or something like that. Definitely in like post-production, if you look at the amount of automation that I'll put on various tracks, it's pretty insane.
Okay. And you mentioned headphones and speakers. I didn't ask you, what headphones are you using and what speakers?
I have some Genelecs just at home. I have some small Genelec 1029s. And then for headphones, I always love the Sony MDR, 7506?
Okay.
Yeah, if you look those up, you'll know. For the listeners, you'll probably recognize them or something. I think they're $100 all day, and which again is maybe a little bit pricey, but I really haven't found much better headphones than that.
Right. So the Genelecs, talk to me about that, because back in the day, Genelecs were my favorite monitors. I would love when an engineer came in and they bring their own speakers and they're like, hey, set these up, and I forget what the model number was of the ones we really loved back then, but they don't make them anymore. Yeah. I did check.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, they've gone through some different iterations. The ones are way more space age now that they're way more rounded and they're kind of cool, but yeah, they have little 4-inch driver ones, 6-inch, 8-inch. I've just used, and you can also get them with a sub if you want like a full setup, if you're mixing, music and stuff like that. But, they're just great. They're really, I've been working on Genelecs for so long. I just know the sound. And they're just super reliable. I know exactly where I am when I'm listening on Genelecs.
And what's the woofer size of your 1029s?
These are just 4-inch.
That's so cool.
Yeah, because they're little. I mean, they're made for my little homes. They're small, but they work.
I did something similar. I got these Neumann KH120A speakers, and I think it's a 4.5-inch woofer. So, and because that's the thing, it's like they're just for home. You want a nice tight sound so you can mix, have a clear mix. You know what I mean? I don't need anything that's like banging subwoofers and stuff.
Right. Yeah, something you can trust. It's
and those are powered as well.
Between these headphones, yeah, they're powered, and between those and these headphones, it's like I know exactly the profile that I'm working with, so I'm never doing a lot of like, well, I'll take this to the car and listen to it, and then it'll be totally different. So all about trusting my sources.
But I'm sure you did that when you first got your Genelecs.
Oh yeah, of course.
Take a mix everywhere, right?
Yeah. I mean, I still like to do car checks and stuff like that, which I don't know if everybody does that or it's just the people I learned from, but definitely back at Larrabee, like that was a big thing is people, and every other studio, but people would listen to, you'd get halfway through a mix or something and people would say, I want to go see what this sounds like. Let's run off a CD, go out into the parking lot and bump it in my car, and because you know what your car sounds like, or maybe there's just such a different speaker setup that you'd end up revealing some stuff that you'd be like, oh my God, I thought that sounded good, and it's awful. Like, we got some work to do, boys.
Yeah. And I remember hearing something, I think it was from Tom Petty or someone in LA. There was some studio in LA that the studio itself had like a little radio transmitter, and the guys would go out in their car and dial in their radio, and they'd be able to listen to the mix in the car, right? As the mix was playing in the control room.
Yeah, that is awesome. That's, man, if you had that radio thing and a DAT player in your car, you are living life, man.
Dude, now I know what I want for Christmas.
Flip the seat up and then there's an ADAT player in the back. I'd be like, whoa, the $6 million man's come to life.
Oh, dude.
But yeah, what a cool idea. But I mean, it makes such a difference to always check your mix on what it's going to end up on, which hopefully would be the radio. If you're Tom Petty, you bet that thing's going to be coming through some radio speakers. You want to know what that's like. People often will have little Oratone speakers to check what it sounds like on a smaller, tinnier, cheaper speaker. Like, yeah, for a headphone or for a podcast, like checking them into earbuds, walk around the house and see what it actually, sounds like goes a long way. But being able to actually transmit it, listen to whatever weird compression and stuff happens when you broadcast it over a antenna and stuff like that, that's awesome.
Right? And it reminds me of a plugin which I found, which actually allows you to listen to your mix as if it's like playing from your phone, or as if it's playing through a different, like a smart speaker or your TV. I forget the plugin, but it on the screen, it just shows you different buttons for all those things, like your car, a boombox. And so like right on the screen, you can just click from a boombox to a car, and it'll change how it sounds to mimic what it would sound like in that space.
Yeah, that's cool. That's probably very useful.
And I looked at it, but I didn't, for podcasting, I didn't need to buy it. I wish I knew the name of it, but I did. I talked about it on one of my live streams of the Podcasters Lounge. So if anyone you can go to podcastengineeringschool.com and search for the Podcasters Lounge posts, and then it's in the show notes of one of those. But that's pretty
that's cool. Could you dial in like, I want a 92 Acura with a kind of a blown tweeter on the passenger side?
I don't
see what
know.
That sounds like.
I don't know. But
there might be an update coming, so check back.
Yeah. It was cool. Like, I just wanted it because it was cool. But I'm usually in my life, I'm able to restrain myself in those moments.
Yeah.
Be like, dude, you don't need that. What are you doing?
Right. But yeah, hey, if it's got fun looking buttons and stuff and it's not a terrible deal, then throw it in the cart.
All right. So you're mixing it down. Now, what are you mixing down to?
As far as file format?
Yep.
Usually, well, it really depends on the project. I'll always check at the beginning of a project what the deliverables need to be, if the company I'm working for has what their standards are, what they're expecting, and you get ranges for everything from some people have no standards, and some people have very, very precise standards, and so I'll usually just do whatever's project specific. But I mean, maybe if I didn't have any standard or something that this would cover most situations, I would always mix down to probably 48K, 24-bit, and then run do an MP3 at the same time. That's like 320. Just some people use those. Some people have them. If you're going to reference, if it's a version like version 3 that ends up being version 3 out of 6, I'll be uploading the MP3 because it's so much smaller as opposed to the full quality version, stuff like that. So yeah, maybe like minus 16 on my WLM meter.
Got it.
You know, like an overall loudness meter. Minus 16, minus 18, something like that, and for a long-term average, and minus 2 or minus 3 on true peak clipping.
Oh, okay. And so for podcasts, the final MP3 file for podcasts, you're not mixing those down to 320 kbps, are you?
It depends. There are some people that do want a 320 stereo.
That's cool.
Yeah, and some people, I mean. There have been a lot of productions I've worked on that will upload they'll upload to the distribution platform a full quality 48K 24-bit, 600 megabyte for your hour-long episode. They'll upload that full quality file to the distribution platform. Now, the distribution platform will often kick out its own MP3 for their own bandwidth's sake, so they're not trying to ship that to everybody's phones. But I think I'm sure it ends up getting kicked down to a 120 or something like that MP3. Because I've talked to a lot of people, and a lot of people are just like, oh, I do a mono 96K MP3 and that's it, and they sound great because there's not a crazy amount of information. So yeah,
I always thought of offering, I don't know how, but I thought of offering this show in 24-bit 48K for the hardcore listeners that they want to download it.
Right. You put it on Neil Young's Pony platform. Is that what it was called? Pony? Remember he did that? Ponos? Pono? Yeah.
Something.
It was a good idea.
It was
I don't know
a
if
really
they're still
good
going
idea.
or not, but yeah.
Well, like all good ideas that think into the future, these days they don't have much appeal because everything these days is everybody wants everything right now.
Yeah, convenience beats everything for sure.
Yeah.
But also file weight when you have so much, but also storage has come such a long way now. Having bigger files is less of a big deal. I don't know.
I hear you. So, all right. Well, what else? Is there anything else we didn't cover from your production that you think might be interesting for podcasters or podcast producers?
I don't know. I just don't know. Is there anything else that you...
I had slipped Barry a note a few minutes ago, and I asked him...
Oh, Barry, yeah.
I said, do you think Scott what do you think Scott Somerville is going to need to really, to keep taking his audio production to the next level? Barry, all right, why don't you just say it into the mic, Barry? Okay, go ahead.
You're going to need a couple of horses or a couple of mules.
I'm going to have to talk to my landlord, Barry, because I don't really have... I got a little patio, but I don't think I'm getting more than one horse out there, buddy.
Barry, that's good advice, but do you really think Scott's going to get, a couple horses or a couple of mules?
Nah, it ain't going to happen.
Well, I'd at least appreciate if you believed in me, Barry. Don't leave me...
I'm telling you.
Come on, man.
Barry, imagine Scott Somerville walking into the Wondery studio with a couple horses or a couple mules.
That's frightening.
I know.
Definitely the security guard would have some issues with it, but I don't know about frightening, Barry.
Yeah. And then so the horses and mules will be standing outside the studio, and then after they go to the bathroom, what's the floor going to look like?
It's a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. I would definitely have to clean that up myself.
This is that sound clip I ever did. Oh. All right, Scott Somerville, thank you, man, for being on the show. I really appreciate talking shop with you. Then there's we could just go on forever pretty much, I think. But I really
appreciate you having me on here. Super cool show, and I'm really glad I bumped into you in Vegas. Hopefully I'll see you again out there next year.
Definitely, yeah. Hopefully I'll be there. And just so you know, at the end, if you can, if it's not going to freak out your neighbors, we're both going to yell "sound great."
Cool.
And you have to, if you can, yell. Seriously, yell. Blow out the mic, everything. Take
Okay.
your pop filter off and blow out the mic. Anyway, thanks everybody for listening. And thanks to Scott Somerville. And here we go, Scott. Go. Sound great! Sound great!
You walk away from me well, and you can't play that part so well. Why do you play it out on me now? You like to lose control well. It's quite a feeling, isn't it? They're floating, drifting down now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond to that? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. What do you want me to say? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. You react some everything. You change your attitude well. You say I just don't get it now. You say your eyes are far away now. You gave up on me well, so change your game and give away. You say I wouldn't understand now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond to that? Oh yeah, I say now it's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. What do you want me to say? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. You react so angry. I want you to know you were always true. I gone over all we've been through. Doesn't seem that long a time now. Things we did still hold their meaning. And does it mean it's still the same? You're pushing me away. The work your theories now where you're getting worked up on you now. The work your way around somehow now. Yes, it hurts me now where that you don't talk to me enough. Now that these worlds have split apart now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond